to our discussions. I'm Tammy. This is Tracy. We have Molly and Nolan and Tabitha here with us. And Molly's going to start us out with a recap of Dr. Lori's session.
I sure am. So, as you guys watched in the previous video, we are talking about connection with others. And so basically what that means is we grew up in certain environments and we learned a lot of different things about how to interact with people. So we learned how we attach, we learned things that are about ourselves that maybe aren't in line with what God says that it should be. But at the end of the day, we are designed for connection. We are made to be in relationship with people around us. And your community is so, so important. But what happens and how do you even know if you're in a safe community? Or how do you know if you're with the right group of people? Or how do you know if you have kind of attachment issues and that there's something that needs to be brought to the table that can be healed through the people that you're in doing life with? So these are kind of the questions that we're going to discuss here today.
Let's just start out with that statistic that Dr. Basey talked about, that 50% of the population has insecure attachments. Has anybody in here met somebody or been involved with an insecure attachment?
Or was one?
Or was one?
Does that work?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit of what that feels like?
Yeah. So I guess mine was prior to this whole CPR program and thing, I went towards fearful. So now secure, thankfully. But when I would test, then my next highest would be fearful. So that's the I'm scared of you and I'm scared of me, which is incredibly isolating. But then you have, what are the other ones?
Anxious and avoidant.
So insecure. So that would be the 4.
And so then anxious says negative view of self and positive view of others, right? So that's going to be like the, I don't trust me, but I do trust you. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I need you to fix me and you're going to do it and you're going to be here and meet all of my needs, right?
Yeah. And that was me. And then I had to also figure out, once I started getting healing and going into this secure attachment, getting over the, I'm sorry, the over apologizing because I felt like it was always me that I was late or I did something that made the situation bad. So I'm sorry. So it's still I'm still recovering apologizer, but recovering. So, but it's still, just making sure that I always keep my love on.
With both of those stories, what I'm hearing is change can happen.
Yes.
That you were one way, but you're a different way now.
Yes.
And you were one way, but you're a different way now. And the factor is Jesus.
Yes,
is the thing that moved you from one direction to the other.
And that's where it's kind of I think with all of these videos, the Bible and biblical standard has to be our reference point for everything. Because right now, when you enter into the world, you're kind of just, people would say, a product of your environment. So you learn a lot of different things about yourself and how to behave, and you learn about how to connect with others based off of whatever societal place that you're born into. And so to unlearn all of those, first with ourselves and then now with others, Jesus has to be the standard. That's the thing that shifts into kingdom rather than me being my own God and deciding how I'm going to interact with the people around me. But he has to be the reference point.
Yeah, agreed.
And then it's really key figuring out the people that are around you, making sure that that's their one desire is to seek Jesus in the fullness of what he has for them as well. Because then if you get people who don't have the same mindset, then it's you might just go one way for a little bit, but you're just going to turn back around and go back to old thought patterns and old.
Yeah. Which really speaks to me. That's it was a huge factor for me. It was realizing that I've got to think about who I'm spending my time with and who I'm allowing to get in my inner circle. And we all know it. It's common sense. Any of us that have been raised or are raising children, we tell them, your group of friends really matters. If you sleep with dogs, you wake up with fleas, hang out with trash, you start to smell like it. But also it's gonna affect your environment. And so either the people that you're hanging around with are going to be distracting you to do things, even if it's not necessarily bad, maybe it is, but if they're going to be thinking of worldly things to do, or they're going to be thinking of what can we do to advance the kingdom of God, and it's going to make a big difference in what you end up spending your time doing. And if you can find people who also have those goals in mind, then it's fun because you love spending time with them anyway, and we're all doing the same thing. And so it's not like I've got to say goodnight to y'all, goodbye to y'all, and go do this by myself. We all do it together, and it's really a community of people that are pushing each other towards Jesus and deepening that relationship and knowing how to walk it out day in and day out with the community.
I can think of some friends who have said, not literally said goodbye to me, but they just sort of phased themselves out of my life because I was choosing to go feed the homeless, or I'm choosing to work for Community Day, and I wasn't available for coffee, or I wasn't available to go shopping. And not that either one of those things are bad things. The invitation was always there for them to come with me to do the destiny-minded things.
Right.
But yeah, I've had several friends. They were there and then they weren't. But I'm thankful for the people that I've in relationship with now doing the things that God's called me to do, and continues to remind me of who I am so that I'll keep connecting into the community and keep doing those things.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be in relationship with with non-believers and believers alike, but so that we can then bring Jesus into the situations of people who aren't yet walking with him, but to have that core group that you go back to, that you make sure that they're allowed in the inner circle, as Dr. Lori put it, so that you can really bounce things off them, and trust their opinions, pray with them. It's just huge. It really helps determine whether or not you're going to be successful day in and day out, walking it out.
And it's so important that inner circle are the people that are seeking Jesus with us and that can help us when we struggle, and they can build each other up and things like that. Because so many times in today's society, we don't want to rejoice when somebody's doing well. We want to, sometimes they want to keep them where they're at. And so we tend to, like you said, our friends kind of move sometimes from our inner circle because maybe we're doing things that they know we're supposed to be doing and that we're living out our calling, but they're not. And so they would much rather us stay with them, because they think then they can justify, like you talked about in the last session, and so that makes a huge difference when we can make sure that those people truly are safe that are in our inner circle, but like you said, those people still come. And I think about when we feed on Thursday nights and we have hundreds of people that come in, and some don't really need anything. They just come because they feel loved and they know that they're seen and that they're heard.
Yes.
And if you find a safe community that you can do life with, and that you could really sort of explore your relationship with God and share with them, and they know you, so you're fully known and you fully know them, it's really neat. They can sometimes see when you're praying together things that maybe you didn't, that you need their perspective, that outside perspective, or they have gifts, unique gifts that the Lord has given them, where they can see things that you don't. And so together, working together, it's more as a body, and it's, wow, I didn't see that, but that's really encouraging. And
I think Dr. Lori talked about blind spots.
Right.
And that community helps us to see our blind spots. A good community can help us see our blind spots. That then helps us be able to see more clearly.
Yeah. And then being open to that. So setting up the people around you that you're growing in Christ with, and then being like, okay, if you see anything, I want to know what it's like to be on the other side of me. And then also coming up with strategies with each other of how to even do it gently. Because there could be one way that they want to say, hey, you're like this, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I'm feeling attacked. So then coming up with common language of even like, when I feel. So when you said this, it really hurt my feelings. Or when you start acting like this, it just feels like something might be off. And then starting that conversation and then even being like, okay, like, can I pray with you right now? And then being that person to help just encourage them to go find it from Jesus and to be able to then process it with in a safe environment.
And that's the connect before you correct. That's the come here. And so that's what's so important about safe communities. And just to, again, just be really clear that safe, meaning those who are thrusting you towards Christ and are for you, and that you are also thrusting them towards Christ and you're for them. That it's not competition, but it's just people that can pour in as the body was designed to. But when you get into that safe community, and then it's not bad when they hold up the mirror, but then it's actually freeing because it's a deeper invitation to know Jesus where you might not be seeing. And so then rather than taking it offensively or like, oh, they're attacking my character because they're safe and because they know you and you know them, it can be just an opportunity and an invitation into freedom.
Exactly.
And looking at it like that rather than here's all the things you're doing wrong.
And kind of speaking to like unconditional love, making sure they feel safe and there's no shame in this, but we're just, we want to see the best you, the you that God created. And also remembering that how all three of these sections, the connection with God, connection with self, and connection with others, they're all interrelated. And so oftentimes, if you think about a friendship or a family member, or that you think if they could just do this differently, things could be, remembering that you are, Jesus with skin on in that situation, and that every community, every group you walk into, every, church on Sunday, coffee shop, wherever you are, you have an opportunity to bring the kingdom into that situation. And so I remember Dr. Lori saying to me, start with you and God, and then it will change your environment. And you can set the temperature, and you can be the thermostat in your community and in the relationships that you have, and it will change everything. And it did change everything, because all of a sudden, when you're not reacting to them in a place of I want to fix you, when you're reacting out of a place of help, then they see that, and it's amazing. It does change, but it takes that step of surrendering. This isn't in my control. This isn't my wheelhouse to fix. All I can do is radiate the sun. I remember her saying that, radiate the SON, sun, and that can shift the environment and everything.
Even having transparency in a relationship like that. So I've had times where my safe community around me, we butt heads. I mean, we're two completely different people, or a group of people that we're all just so different, and we butt heads, and then so sometimes not the fruit comes out. And so then having the grace and the transparency of saying, I don't like what just happened just now, but let me go back to Jesus. Let me take it to him and figure it out, and I will come back and talk to you. So then having a timeline of within 24 hours or 48 hours or 2 hours, I'm going to come back and we can revisit this conversation and let's talk about it.
And that's where you're maintaining your connection. Like, where if you know that both parties or whoever you're in relationship with, like, the goal is to maintain that connection. Like, if you can even just establish, I'm not going anywhere and you're not going anywhere. So our only option is to figure this out. And we are so different that the only thing that's going to work to figure it out is going to be Jesus Christ himself revealing himself. And that changes everything, because then you're working towards the common goal of him being glorified in the relationship, but maintaining that connection. So there's not that fear, right? If I'm fearful, then I go back to that I'm scared that it's going to just drop, that they're just going to decide one day that it's no longer connected.
I'll just say it's just not going to work to try to go have a connection with Jesus and then go about your day with a community of people who aren't doing that. It's just, you're going to do, your environment just affects you. That's how we were created, because we were created to be in community. So making deliberate decisions about who you're going to give access and spend time with. It's like, not only what are you thinking about, but also who are you around?
Show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
There you go.
That's right. I can remember when my husband and I were not being real sweet to each other one day, let's just say. Really? And he grabbed my hands, and we hadn't been married very long, and he said, honey, we just need to pray. And I remember thinking, this is terrible to admit, but I thought, I don't want to pray with you. I want to be mad at you.
Yeah. That's a true statement.
It is. But, but as soon as we're praying, then I realized I can't stay angry at him or at myself. Mm-hmm. And so us praying together in that community helped us to not only take it to Jesus, but learn that we had to forgive each other, but we had to give ourselves a break too and forgive ourselves also during that.
I want to remember back to maybe when you were first a Christian or first starting to try to build a community. Do you remember how it was difficult to come to that realization that some things are going to change? And it might be some friends that you deliberately have to remove yourself from, or some situations that you used to participate in that are like, okay, I have to make the choice. If I'm going to go forward in a healthy way, I have got to be in a community that's going to facilitate me being healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any stories that go along with that?
Yeah. I went back to, so I'd come to know Christ, and I'm in a brand new community, and I mean, my thing was the party scene. And so kind of that transition from the party scene into the Jesus scene was like wildly different than anything I had ever experienced. And I remember at one point after being in safe community for a while, and then I get invited to something from just people in the past who are lovely but not following the Lord. And I was like, yeah, like I'll go. Like, sure, like why not? Like this will be fine. And so I go to the same bar with the same people, and it had been like probably 3 years since I had seen them. And we're sitting there, and I just remember like everyone's participating in whatever they were participating in at the moment. And I just remember sitting there, and my friend next to me, she was like, we didn't even know like where to find you. Like we didn't even know like where you are or what you're doing or where to even like how to even contact you or if you would even come, or like any of these things. And I just, in my head, I was just like, but I knew where to find you. Like, but I knew exactly where you would be with what you were doing, because I know that nothing's changed. Mm-hmm. And that was a hard thing in my heart to like recognize of like, this is stagnant, and not just because I haven't chosen yet, but it's like when we choose to still stay in that place with the people around us, like there's no room to grow. We just get stuck in that death cycle and call it community when really it's chains and it's captivity. But just realizing like, man, like I can't do this. I can't come back to these kinds of things because this isn't me. And I don't want to be going backwards. Like, do you know? I was like, do you know that there's something more than this? That there's more than just these kinds of activities and these friends and these conversations, but that you're created for something more. And that was hard.
But I think some of what you're saying is that you knew yourself. You were in connection with yourself at that point too, with God and yourself, and you knew what you'd be able to handle. And I think that one thing I know we don't want to say is that you just need to step away from, get out. We need to be in the world and not of the world. And sometimes God's put you in a place where you have a connection with people where you can bring His kingdom into that situation, but sometimes you're not ready for that yet, and you're not strong enough, and you have to deliberately, and you'll see relationships come and go, but obviously some you're going to drift apart from and may never get close again with. But just knowing that in order for me to maintain that connection, I'm not ready to be around this group yet. And sort of, going in and out of, I got to stay connected with God. I need my safe group. And then also wanting to draw people in that don't yet know Jesus, because we can't isolate ourselves, obviously.
Yes.
So it's just a real delicate balance, and we have to look to the Spirit to lead us in that, and trust that He
Definitely.
will, and take it to Him, and allow Him to tell us where we need to be going.
I mean, because we have to, like you said, that delicate balance. Because if I were to just, like, you can't always just go in and then just preach, which even if you think you can, everyone comes to know Christ and it's the best day ever, but that isn't always how it works out. But what I found is if I go back into an environment to prove the point of you're going to know Jesus and I'm going in so that you know Jesus. But if he's not going there, or if he wasn't involved in that decision, then that's when you have to follow Holy Spirit.
Right.
Of whatever he's inviting you. Like, is he inviting you to go because it's time? Or are you deciding to go because you are ready for it to be time?
Right.
Yeah.
The two are very,
Very
very
good.
different.
And making the distinction between what is safe community, what's that inner circle community versus the, other outside circles.
And so that safe community also can pray with you and help listen and help advise you, again, pointing you towards Him in everything that you're doing. So,
And it doesn't mean we love them any less.
No.
We're just going to spend less time with them.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those inner circles getting the high levels of respect and responsibility, going back and forth towards each other. Whereas the further out you go, the less you really require of them.
Right.
I mean, and we have to set up boundaries to protect ourselves, not out of a controlling way, but to know our limits of, I know that I can do this and I know that I can't do this. And sometimes it comes down to, like what you were saying, I'm sorry, I can't handle this right now. I'm going to have to separate myself.
But then you also have to learn, I think, in the transition from maybe not so safe to safe, like, the ways that you connected with this group does not work in your safe group.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the behaviors and the things that were condoned in your unsafe group are not appropriate or tolerated in your safe group. And so that's when we, just to bring it back to attachment for just a second, of then choosing to trust your safe people with the definition of that they're following Jesus and you're trying to follow Jesus, and learning to trust their input and learning to stay connected with them even when everything that is coming at you feels like an attack. But tell your brain and your body to settle down and to keep trying anyway, and to maintain connection even when you want to push it away, because it's harder at first to get used to the different dynamics that you once, you broke away from, and then getting used to the new and used to healthy. It's a whole different, we could probably talk for another 8 hours.
Well, and Jesus gives he gives so many examples. He models this perfectly. There's the 12. And then he also went to dinner with the drunkards and tax collectors. And I mean, he did the life with all types of people, but then he had a community that he did life differently with. And so he models that of kind of, he loves them all, but just the access that you're going to give.
And I think for us to remember to show grace, because those people that were out here
was me yesterday.
I mean, we don't know what God has done with them. And so we have to be willing and ready to listen and encourage them when they do reach out and say, okay, let me tell you what Jesus has done.
Right.
I think Dr. Lori talks about seeing the wonder in other people and wandering with them and pushing them into their destiny, and they don't have to be stuck out there in the outer circles forever, because we're all hoping that all will come to the saving knowledge of the Lord. And so letting our eyes always be ready to see what He sees.
Because even then,
that's good.
With every single person on the planet, whether they acknowledge it or not, are image bearers of Christ. And if we can see that every person, regardless of if they're in your safe circle or not, carries a new facet of Him, and every time you're introduced to one, you're being reintroduced to Jesus in a brand new way of however they're representing Him on the world. And if we could see them like that, rather than in a stuck behavior and then begin to call out those things.
Yeah.
And so they might not necessarily be in your safety circle, but they're not scary.
Right. And it's so easy to just think of someone from one instant one encounter that you had with them.
Yes.
And labeling them with that one encounter and saying, nope, not going there. But then finding the grace, okay, Jesus, show me how to love them well today. And if it's time, if I need to move them in closer or if I need to move them out further, just continue. I mean, connection with God and then connection with self,
Interact.
and then connection with others. Just they all three go together.
Yes.
Because they're all just connecting with him. I mean, it's when we're connecting with ourselves, like if we're image bearers again, like we're also getting to know him.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
How about you give us a recap?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm hearing is that if you've noticed that your friend group might be unsafe, meaning they're not thrusting you towards Jesus, and if you realize that there might be some behaviors that are in you that aren't conducive to even facilitate a safe community, then I would just encourage you to try it anyway, to find people that you can let in, that you want to know and that will know you in a safe way and will thrust you towards the Lord. And then to not be afraid to set up boundaries, and not in a condemning way, but in a, hey, I'm not healthy enough yet to still participate in those activities with those people. But man, I'm going to keep my love on towards them. So when it's time that we can reconnect and to set up these things in your life, because really, it really is true. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And they say, how do you know if someone's a Christian? And they said, how many Christian friends do they have? I heard that quote the other day and it was mind blowing. And what I found is that it really is true. So, and at the end of this video, there's going to be 2 other testimonies from myself and Nolan that go a little bit deeper into our walk out of unhealthy connection and then walk into safe connection with others. So until next time.
Okay, so this is connection with others. For me, again, after leaving Oklahoma after the 5 days, I knew that if I came back to Pawleys Island and I did not put things in place structures in place, relationships that I could do life with, that I would go right back to the old patterns and ways of doing things. And so it was going to be really important for me to create a community of people who would support me. And so basically I asked 2 friends if they would meet with me on a weekly basis and go through the journey of restoration with me. We would meet every Wednesday, and as people that I was already in relationship with, and so they agreed to because they love me and they're Christians and believers too. But it was going to be important for them to for us to come together, and we spent time in worship, and then we did the journey of restoration. We listened to it together, and we talked through it, and we prayed together. And honestly, it was really the first time in my adult life that I had relationships and friends who we prayed on the phone together, and we texted each other encouragement, and we thrust each other towards Jesus. And I started realizing that is so important because, we've all got wonderful friends who we have a great time with, but we need people who are just as passionate about Jesus as we are, who are gonna, when we're down, pick us up, thrust us towards him, who know us. We need to be known, we need to be fully known, and we need to know others so that not only do they know your strengths and they can help you to develop those strengths, but also they know your weaknesses. They know where you're likely to fall back into old patterns, and they can encourage you to not do that and to lift you up. And so that has been incredible for me. I know that if I didn't have that support system and those friendships of people who equally want to grow together and see Jesus and hear from Jesus, to talk about and dream about what he's doing and what gifts he's given us each uniquely, and how the body of Christ works together in a really fun way. It's so much fun doing life with people that way. And I think it's essential. We're not meant to walk alone and be with other people only who aren't also believers. We're meant to be in relationship with non-believers, believers. We're supposed to have mentors, people who are not mentoring, and people who are just in the same spot that we are, so that we can grow and we can help others to grow. And that was something I think I was lacking before, is really deliberately choosing Christian relationships who are going to help thrust me towards Jesus, and vice versa. So putting them, creating that sort of safe group where we could grow together was essential for me. And I don't think you could have that. It can't just be you and God. It's got to be, there's something that happens when two or more are gathered and they are calling out to him and praying together and laughing together and doing life together with Jesus in the center, that doesn't happen apart from that. And so I would really encourage you to find safe people, to find safe friends who also want to grow and want to know Jesus deeper, because it just really does exponentially increase your success. And it's just so much fun. So I would definitely encourage that.
So, in connection with others, prior to being in a safe community where I could really kind of learn how to live and thrive in my relationships with people, I would test in the more fearful side on the attachment questionnaire. And so learning what it's like to go from fearful to secure has been probably the most wild thing in my entire life. But before, in fearful attachment, basically it's kind of like I'm scared of you and I'm scared of me, which is just literally the most horrific place to be, because then you don't even know who you're trusting or how to even trust. Because if I'm thinking in my mind all the time, I can't trust you and I can't trust me, then what? It's tormenting, and it was the worst. So then being in an environment of people that would sit with me in that and teach me what it looks like to choose secure attachment and choose to connect even when I didn't know that it was safe or that I was safe. And then doing that with Jesus, because I think a lot of times, man, you'll take that attachment questionnaire, and I would attach the things that I was feeling in fearful attachment with people to my relationship with Christ. That if I can't trust people, that my relationships, I learned, are kind of a direct reflection on my relationship with him. And was I scared of him? And was I scared of other people? So then I got into this community, and what happened was I ended up living with our outreach director for a period of time. And it's super, super funny, because in the ways that I would connect were not the same ways that she would connect. So we would had to learn each other's love languages. And so as an example, if her love languages are acts of service and words of affirmation, but mine's physical touch and quality time, then in my brain, when I'm sitting there, doing the dishes, I really like someone to sit next to me and just kind of talk. They don't need to be doing the dishes as well. We can just sit there and talk. But with her, if she's doing the dishes and I'm sitting there talking, to realize that that's not how she's feeling loved. And it was just, it's actually super funny. And it was a really fun time in our life. And then in all the ways that I would be scared or prepared for her to leave me, I was in this place where I just think anytime I mess up or anytime something happens where I'm not doing my best, that people are going to leave. And so her consistency of just sitting down and being like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. Will you still choose to give me a piece of your heart? Will you still choose to connect with me and trust little by little that I'm not going anywhere? That we're in this together, that it's okay, that we're going to get through it. And it was just those little things like that in my brain eventually over time would say, okay, this is someone that I can trust, and this is a relationship that I want to pursue, and they're not going anywhere, so then I won't either. And then being able to have really healthy conversations. So then whenever she had to learn that I can't read her mind, and I had to learn that she literally says, when she says something, she means it. And which was just shocking to me.
So connecting with others has been a super fun thing to experience, especially in the last several years, and how different it's been from in the past, where always someone just wanted something from you. And being able to go from, man, what happens when you're in a community, in a safe community, that isn't wanting anything from you, they just want to be with you. And then taking that same thing and applying it to Jesus. Like, he didn't want a whole bunch from me, he just wanted me. And that changed everything about how I've connected in the last several years.